So yeah, today we're talking about Mercury Editor. I'm specifically talking about a few things that are new with Mercury Editor. Also, hopefully everyone can see my screen okay. If there's any issues with that, I don't know, Jenna, maybe let me know. And
It looks good.
awesome, thanks. Great, so we're going to be talking about what's new with Mercury Editor. Some of this we covered back in January, some of this we did not cover back in January, so excited to get into it. So what we'll cover, first of all, I'm just going to talk briefly about what Mercury Editor is and its key features. I'll chat through the Mercury Editor ecosystem, some other modules that are kind of at play with Mercury Editor, some that Mercury is built on top of, some that kind of enhance functionality for Mercury. I'll talk about what's new. Again, some of this we talked over or we covered back in January. What we did not cover is what's coming in Mercury Editor 3X. Super excited about that. A lot of UI enhancements. And a lot of other features, and we'll kind of get into that. And we'll talk through that as a live demo. Always a really good idea. So what is Mercury Editor? Mercury is first and foremost a Drupal module. This is free open source software. It's available for download on Drupal.org. Mercury provides really easy, no-code, drag and drop editing built on existing systems in Drupal, systems that many folks, tons of organizations, have already standardized on to implement their content models and content management. Mercury provides component-based authoring. So the idea is that you establish and design a component library or system of components, a design system, and that you can then use those components to create content. Mercury provides styles management for managing styles across those components. We'll get into what that looks like exactly here in a minute as well. And finally, it provides a really streamlined UI for working with content. And I'll show exactly what we mean by that. Again, we'll take a look at what Mercury looks like in a out-of-the-box Drupal 10 website. Like if you just go install Drupal, install Mercury, we'll take a look at what that looks like. And then we'll get into how this might what this might look like on a more customized application, in our case, looking at the Aten.io website. I just have a couple slides to share here with some information. I want to talk briefly about the ecosystem for Mercury Editor. First and foremost, of course, is the Mercury Editor module itself. We're at version 2.2 as far as stable release. It's 2.2.1. I think there's been one release since the last webinar about this. We were at 2.2.0 previously. Mercury heavily leverages the paragraphs module. Paragraphs is still the most widely used module for implementing component-based, the ability of being able to organize content as components within your entities in Drupal. So having a page that itself is built up of different components. Paragraphs is the most widely used module for managing that kind of a paradigm with over 250,000 installs. Mercury Editor also heavily leverages layout paragraphs. This is a module that I co-maintain with a couple other folks here at Aten. We're up to just over 12,000 installs with layout paragraphs. Layout paragraphs brings visual layout control to paragraphs. So think not only do you have the ability to think about and work with content as components, but then really easy visual editing of those components. All of this makes use of the layout API in Drupal core, makes use of another module that we maintain called style options, which provides a centralized way of managing styles. We'll take a look at what that looks like, and I'm happy to answer any questions about that. I'm going to touch briefly on Mercury Layouts. Mercury Layouts is a repository of layouts available on Drupal.org. It provides some advanced layouts for doing things like working with tabs and accordions. One of the values of layout paragraphs and in turn Mercury Editor is it solves some of the performance problems that were previously associated with paragraphs in the way it handles nested content. So instead of having nested relationships, so paragraphs within paragraphs, all of that is managed in a much flatter data structure, which solves some performance problems that were a problem with the way we used to manage layouts and nesting paragraph relationships. It also makes the UI a lot cleaner. It makes it really easy to do layout paragraphs restriction, single, or I think there's also a module called layout paragraphs limit. Obviously, this is functionality that a lot of folks are interested in, and a lot of different folks have contributed to in various ways. Layout paragraphs restrictions is the module that we've been maintaining that provides a really easy system for managing what components can be added to what sections and regions. So what paragraph types can be inserted in what sections and regions. I'll show how that works and kind of, yeah, so folks can make use of that. And then finally, I think this is the last piece in here. We're not going to get into this today, but there's another piece of this is Mercury Editor Live Edit, which brings live edit functionality to Mercury Editor. So think, as you're working with a live preview in Mercury Editor, you would be able to just click on text and edit the text directly on the page. I'm not going to focus on this, as I said, in this webinar. We've talked about this a little bit in the past, and I'm sure this will come back in future webinars. Today, I'm really going to focus on the new features in 3x. So let's talk about what's new. Stable release 2.2.1 at this point. That in and of itself has performance enhancements, UI refinements, and a number of bug fixes. Part of the design of Mercury has always been that it just work out of the box, and that's true for this latest stable release. Mercury Editor works on virtually any Drupal 10 or 11 website and just takes over the add content and edit content screens for content types that admins have configured, for which admins have configured it to work. It can be installed and uninstalled without impacting other website functionality. This is not a new way of storing data, handling data, working with content. It doesn't change the field system in Drupal at all. It's not a change in that system. It sits on top of all of that to provide a UI. And it's been very important to us all along that this can be installed and then later uninstalled without impacting a website. So it really is just an authoring tool. There's end-to-end automated testing on the 2x branch using Cypress that runs on every single commit. Documentation and improved project page on Drupal.org, as well as some documentation about the overall ecosystem for Mercury Editor. Again, that ecosystem is growing with Mercury Layouts. Worth pointing out just briefly, Mercury Layouts does not have a hard dependency on Mercury Editor. So in theory, those layouts work for other systems like layout paragraphs or even just the layout API, although we are certainly optimizing those layouts and really focusing that work on our focus with Mercury Editor. Mercury Editor Live Edit and restrictions, which I touched on just a second ago. And then finally, I'm going to demo Mercury Editor 3x, currently in dev with a dev release on Drupal.org, which features a new UI. I'll talk a little bit about that, but it's a new UI, very much refactored JavaScript, moving away from jQuery in favor of just native JavaScript for performance enhancements, and also just making the code base much simpler, moving in the same direction that core is moving as far as that goes. Also features autosave, which we'll get into, undo and redo capabilities, and a few other features, some of which I'll demo and some of which I'll talk about that will be coming soon. All right, that is all of the slide content I have for you all today, and just an overview of what we're covering. With all of that, I'm going to dive into a demo. I'm going to start just with a simple Drupal 10 website. Very few modules are installed on this demo site. This is really just running to demonstrate the capability of Mercury Editor as if you had just installed Mercury Editor and really nothing else, and it will come with all of its dependencies. There is also a test module in the tests subdirectory of Mercury Editor that enables a test content type and some test paragraph types and kind of sets everything up as a test for you. And again, if folks are interested in that, I can certainly speak to that in the Q&A portion of this. But for now, we'll just get right into it. So this is using the Gin admin theme. That's what these icons are coming from down the left-hand side. I'm going to click on Manage Content, this first option. Add content. This is that test content type that I mentioned a second ago that's provided by the test module. I'll click on Mercury Editor Test Content Type, and this has launched us into the Mercury Editor interface. This looks a little different, or maybe a lot different, than the core content creation or content add form. The form itself is over in the left in this edit tray. We can move that around. If we want to hide it entirely, we certainly can. On the left-hand side, we have this live preview pane that has the front end view of the website. A little hard to see how that, kind of what the implications of that are in such a simple website just using the Olivera theme, but that'll make more sense as we look at a custom example. We have mobile preview capability, so I can click this mobile view. These presets are all configuration options, so it's really easy in the back end to just swap those out with whatever presets you want to support for your organization. I'll go back to desktop view. For anyone that's interacted with layout paragraphs before, this is using layout paragraphs for managing these components in the front end. I'll hit the plus button. Here are all of the different paragraph types or components that I have configured. I'm going to add a new section. We'll choose a 2-column section. Drops the section in place. One thing that's new as of the 2x branch for Mercury is this auto padding feature. So as you mouse over, it automatically adds padding. That's because of this challenge. Mercury, or rather layout paragraphs, supports nested layouts. So if I click this plus button, add a section within my section, these overlaps get pretty hard to manage. So we're automatically adding this padding to give us a little bit of separation. Now, all of that depends on managing the UI with hover states. And something that's new as of 3x that we'll get into is moving away from hover states in favor of click. And I'll kind of talk through what that means here in another couple minutes. All right, I'm going to delete my nested section and add a component. I'm going to add an image. Go to choose a file, upload a file. Mercury Editor integrates seamlessly with the media module. Give this a name. Hit save, insert, and that file, or rather that media, is dropped into the interface, again, into that live preview. I'm going to click add on the right-hand panel again, add some text. And again, hopefully all that makes sense, working directly on that live preview to add components. We can easily copy components, so I can hit this clone button to quickly clone this. There's also an option with the layout paragraphs templates submodule to create templates from components. So in this case, I've created this section. Imagine the section was more complex with lots of content within it. We can hit the clone button, or rather the create template button. I'll just call this my template. Hit save. That template is saved to a template library. If I hit the plus button now, we have this new section of components for templates. If I hit my template, drops that right in place. That's a quick look, again, at a glance of how Mercury Editor works with working with content. Layout paragraphs allows you to quickly and easily change the kind of section that you are working with. So I can click into edit, change to a 3-column, it immediately changes that out, move this content around. If I want to change this back to a 2-column or even a 1-column, now it would just ask me what I want to do with that content that for which there would no longer be any regions that apply. So in this case, if I go to a 1-column, there's only one section in the 1-column layout. It's called content. This is just asking what I want to do with the items that are in first and third. And I'm just going to leave it as is. So it just drops that into that 1-column. Great. Let's talk a little bit about some of the, as I was talking about earlier, some of the more advanced types of sections that one might be interested in adding and how they differ a little bit from the way we used to do things, like many others who I think have the same approach of nesting paragraphs within paragraphs. So anymore, we have really come to standardize on using layouts for that kind of behavior. And I'll explain what I mean by just backing out of here. We'll hit done. It asks me, it says that changes won't be saved. I'm not going to worry about it. Won't save those. We'll back out of here, go into structure, down to content types. I'm going to click into manage fields on my Mercury editor test content type. And there are a couple of new paragraphs that are using layouts provided by that Mercury layouts module. They are accordion and tabs. Now, that module does not provide these paragraphs directly. Before I go back to create content and show you how those accordions and tabs work, let me just show what that setup process would be like. And this is something I had already set up ahead of this webinar, but this will give you an idea of what you would need to do in your own implementation. So for both accordion and tabs, I have just created paragraph types. They have no fields. If I go back out and edit the paragraph, the only thing I've done for this paragraph is enable the layout paragraphs behavior and chosen the accordion layout as the single layout that I want to support for this layout paragraph type. Hopefully that makes sense. It's kind of a mouthful. All of that, again, I've created a new paragraph type. I've enabled layout paragraphs and said that I want to use the accordion layout, enable the accordion layout for that paragraph type. So let's take a look at what that looks like in the front end. So I'm going to add content, add again my test content type, click the plus button. I now have these new layouts, accordion and tabs. I'm going to get rid of my template actually really quick. Let's go back out of here and I'll show really quickly. Templates are managed under the admin content section. There's this Mercury editor templates option now, and you can see all of your templates here. I'm just going to get rid of this so it's not distracting, and we'll go back into add content. Great. And now our three layout types, or three layout paragraph types, are section, accordion, and tabs. I'll add an accordion. Again, I've added no fields to that, so this form has no real options for me other than just save. It immediately drops the accordion onto the screen. This is a really interactive layout plugin type. I can edit my accordion labels right here on the screen. Pressing enter just saves that change. I can edit my second one. Again, this is a dynamic custom layout plugin. So this is not nested paragraph fields. Everything is managed in a single flat list, which is an improvement for performance, but also for the UI. So inside my accordion items, I can open an accordion, click the plus button, add some text. And that nested item is in the exact same interface as everything else on this screen. I can pull this text down into my second accordion if I like. I can click the plus button, add tabs, which work in almost the same way, and do the same thing. Or maybe I want to duplicate this text and then quickly drag it up into my first tab. Let's say I wanted that same text in tab 2. Actually, let's say I just want that text component itself in tab 2. I can pull it out, click on tab 2, and insert it into the content region of that tab. And that's a quick look at how all that works. Hopefully it makes sense. Again, happy to answer any questions about it. I'll take a look at one other piece of Mercury Editor really quickly. It's designed, again, to streamline the UI. When I hit the plus button and choose accordion, it's showing me this blank form with just save and cancel, which seems like an unnecessary step. There are often times where we have components where we don't really have configuration, or we don't have fields with that component that need to be filled out, and it makes more sense to drop those components immediately on that live preview. In those cases, Mercury Editor provides this skip edit form option, and I'll show you what I mean. I'll just go into Mercury Editor settings, click on skip form settings. I'm going to turn on accordion and tabs, which just says we're going to skip that form for accordions and tabs. Go back to content creation screen, hit the plus button, add tabs, immediately drops those tabs onto the screen, again, for a much more streamlined process. You can think of, we often use paragraph types that are more decorative even, like spacers or dividers for the page, things like that, where it makes more sense to just immediately drop those components on the screen rather than getting the user to click through an unnecessary form. Okay, that's a quick look at Mercury layouts and some of the more complex layout types that we've been working on. Let me transition for a second and talk about layout paragraphs restrictions. So layout paragraphs restrictions is a module that allows site admins to configure what paragraph types can go in what sections, and basically provides a means of managing governance across a website or even series of websites. The basic problem that we're trying to solve here is I may not want someone to be able to add anything to, say, the first column of a 3-column layout other than text and a video. I certainly don't want them adding a slideshow or a component that's intended to be used in a more expansive environment. So for that purpose, we have layout paragraphs restrictions. Layout paragraphs has APIs built in for managing these kinds of restrictions. Layout paragraphs restrictions provides a really easy way to configure those restrictions. For those of you with a more technical background or with developers on your teams, layout paragraphs restrictions is also a good example of how to programmatically create those restrictions. So if you wanted more complex restrictions and really wanted business logic around your restrictions or your governance rules for layout paragraphs, you can sort of dig into that module to see how that might be done. But for now, I'm just going to show what the configuration looks like. I'm going to create a new restriction, arbitrarily named limit first columns. The context for this is this restriction should apply to 3-column where it has the 25, 50, 25. I'll show what that means here in just a second, but it should only apply to this layout and only the first region. And the only components I want someone to be able to insert into this context is the test text and test video component. I'll hit save, go back to create content, add content, create my test type. We'll add a section, make it a 3-column section. This is that 3-column 25, 50, 25 layout that I referenced in my restriction. Hit save. When I hit the plus button, as you would imagine from that configuration, the only options available are text and video. With the other regions, I can still add any of the components that are available. If I add a component into this region and attempt to, if I can grab this, missed it, there we go, grab it, I can't, the JavaScript is also blocking that move. So I can't even pull this. Not only can I not create it by hitting the plus button, the JavaScript correctly governs what can be added into this section and prevents me from adding this kind of non-sanctioned or disallowed component into that first region. That's a quick look at layout paragraphs restrictions. Happy to answer any other questions about that. The module page does a good job of describing how the restrictions work, what the syntax is for those restrictions. And again, digging into the code for that module is a good way of kind of understanding or getting familiar with the APIs that are built into layout paragraphs for managing all of that. All right, that's some of what we have been working on in Mercury Editor. I want to talk, as I said before, a little bit about what's coming with Mercury Editor. So this is what exists currently. If you go download the stable release, all of this is available. Let's take a look at what's coming in the 3x version. This is running a dev instance, or I'm running a dev instance of our website locally. I'm going to use this as an example. And I just want to talk one more time about one of the UX challenges that we were seeking to solve. If I go back to my 2x, Mercury 2x example, and I add a section in this header region, sometimes it's necessary working with more complex layouts, and we're seeing this more and more with our clients. It's necessary to nest simpler sections to achieve the layouts that we want. So just as an example of what happens with the UI, I'm just going to drop a one column. Let's actually do something a little bit maybe more realistic, is having a two column inside that header region. I'm going to drop a two column inside the header region. And the challenge is now as you mouse over these different components, it becomes really difficult to contextualize where you are in the layout and sometimes to even click on the correct section container. So one workaround for that has been to add this padding. As we add padding, as you hover, it's adding that padding to prevent collision or overlap of those labels. The challenge with that, of course, is as we add padding, things often with padding added reflow in a way that we don't intend. And this live preview becomes a less exact copy of what the actual front-end content is going to look like. So we spent some time thinking through how we might tackle this. And what we've really come to is thinking about click as the way to manage that user experience rather than hover. And just to give a quick example of what I mean, this is our website. In order to achieve this layout on the homepage, we have a section, and inside that section, a nested two-column section for the See Our Work and Let's Talk buttons. This is running Mercury Editor 3X. A few things right out of the gate that are different. One is, as I'm hovering, the only thing that's changing is I'm getting an outline over the highest level section and this label that tells me what I would be clicking into if I clicked, what I'm pointing out essentially. So this is a Mercury stack layout. And it's the section paragraph type. If I click into this, it highlights it, selects it, automatically opens the edit panel on the right-hand side, and then allows me to drill further inside. There's a simple text component which I can highlight. I can also click into this nested section, which is within that parent section. And then we have these text components inside that nested section. This Mercury editor, or rather Mercury cluster layout plugin, allows us to tile content horizontally rather than vertically. Mercury Editor 3X tries to figure that out automatically and reorients the plus buttons. So instead of the plus buttons being top and bottom, they're left and right. And also as I drag this, I'm getting those hints that tell me where it will be dropped correctly on the left and right sides rather than top and bottom. If I drag this section up above, again, we see that hint showing above that text component. I can drag that wherever I want. Something else that's new with 3X that you may have noticed is this undo and redo state. As we move through edits, each of those edits just captures that node, a snapshot of that node, as a version stored in the back. And this is not stored in permanent storage. It's not creating a revision. This is all stored temporarily in a way that you can easily click back through. So you can go back through your edits or forward through your edits. Another huge change that's happening in the 3X version is autosave capability or autosave functionality. So when we click into a text component, that component edit screen is opened on the right automatically. If I wanted to simplify this tagline and just say strategy, design, development, get rid of the rest of this tagline, I can do that. Those changes show up automatically. Let's say I want to change the way that breaks. Nope, I'm going to go back. Again, all of those changes happening automatically. I can preview the work live. I can preview what that looks like in mobile, go back out to desktop, and again, work through undo states or redo states to quickly kind of make changes, make decisions in the browser. That's how this works, or that's what's happening in Mercury 3X. I'm going to quickly create some new content with the 3X branch, just again to show a little bit more about kind of how the flow of this would work. I'll go into add a new case study. In this case, I'm just going to be recreating the case study that we have on our current website for the city of Boulder. Click the plus button, add a new section. It immediately drops that section on the live preview, opens the edit panel on the left, or on the right rather. I'm going to choose a one column layout. go into the Styles tab. This is using that module called Style Options that I mentioned before. All of these styles are using plugins in the Drupal plugin system to manage styles for this content. And they're all, the configuration for this is all managed in a single YAML file. So it brings everything together. You don't have to click through all of your different paragraph types to manage styles if you're using style options. You can do that in a central place. I'm going to scroll down, change the background color, go over and to the left, add a new component. We'll call this masthead, or we'll choose the masthead component. Type the title of my post here. That's looking okay, but really I want light on dark as a color scheme. So I'll go back into my section, down to this color scheme option, click light on dark. Again, those changes applying immediately in the browser. Click again on this masthead, add a subhead here. You can see those changes happening automatically. We are extending support to more and more form widgets. So this works for everything, of course, that we're seeing right now. It works for media. If I go in here and just do a quick search for Boulder, find some images that we have for City of Boulder, can drop these in place, automatically adds those. If I want to change the order, I can do so. Again, it detects that change and adds that right in place. I'll add just a little bit more content here, and then I'll take a break and pause for questions. So I'll add another section. Ooh, it's put that section inside the top section, which is not what I wanted. Let's see if I can get to it. Grab that. Yeah, so I can drag that out, drop it. I've just dropped it outside of that section, which is where it should go. I want this not to be Mercury stack, but to be a 2-column, and I want it to be 50-50, or this 1-1 ratio. Click on the left-hand side, add some text. I'm gonna grab some text off screen here. Paste this in. Hopefully everyone's getting the idea of kind of what the goal is here, what we're going for with this version of Mercury. Again, the idea really in all of this is to shorten the distance between the editing experience and viewing the content and make it really easy for editors and marketers to work with content. I'm going to choose this padded style. That's in the back end, that's really just applying an arbitrary class that is then tied to that applies a style via the theme layer. Give this a background color, and that's looking pretty close to what the front end or what the actual live case study looks like. We're going to do the same thing over here on the right. Add some more text. Drops immediately into that live preview. I'm going to skip down a few just for the sake of time here and add a 3-column layout. So we've added our section. I'll go into 3-column. I want the center section to be a little bit wider though. There we go. I'm going to change this to light on dark and pick a background color. Again, grab some text off canvas here. And I'll inject that text into this center column. A little hard to see what's happening with the overlap of colors there. Hopefully it makes sense, or hopefully that's coming across. Paste that in. Go over to styles here, and then I'm going to add down below, we'll add a slideshow, add some media. Again, narrow those down to City of Boulder, grab these 3 images and drop them in. That slideshow is immediately rendered on that live preview. I really want this piece on the bottom. I want the alignment of this to be flush. There is a style for that. Again, in our style options, the options that we've configured for our site, there's this flush bottom style that just shortens that up. So that looks a little bit cleaner. I'll go back into my slideshow, and just to show again, as I rearrange these images on the right, it's automatically updating the order in the live preview. All right, that's a quick look at how Mercury Editor, or some of the features in Mercury Editor 3X. Again, undo and redo being a big focus of all of this, so we can quickly and easily go back through our edits, forward through our edits. Once we're done, save, click done, And here's the front end view of this looking really, really close to what's happening in the back end. All right, that's it as far as my demos go. Let's go back to the slideshow here. Yeah, learn more at aten.io/Mercury, just our website. Follow us on Twitter. Email me directly. I'd love talking with folks about this stuff and would love to stay in touch.